I've been a therapist, mediator, attorney for over 35 years. I'm also a certified teacher of meditation, yoga, and Ayurveda. And I've helped individuals and couples, either in individual counseling, couples counseling, or divorce mediation, communicate compassionately. And one of the main tools that I've used, either with my own clients or when I teach other professionals, I give them my Miracle of Empathy handout, because what we're going to do is talk about empathy, but empathy in all of its forms. In other words, it's not just relationships with a partner. It can be relationships with a child, with a parent, with a coworker. Any issue that's causing you stress, I want you to be able to share it with others in a way that gets you heard. And the way to do that is to look at what Thich Nhat Hanh says. And Thich Nhat Hanh has said that the ability to reconcile conflicting parties means you have to understand the suffering of both sides. And if we take sides, it's impossible to do the work of reconciliation. And humans want to take sides. This is why the situation gets worse and worse. Are there people who are still available to both sides? They need not do much. They need only do one thing. Go to one side and tell all about the suffering endured by the other side, and go to the other side and tell all about the suffering endured by this side. This is our chance for peace that can change the situation. Sadly, that's not what's happening now. Because if there were more empathy, we'd have a new way to communicate from our highest and best self with compassion and understanding. The needs of the heart for more attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance. Now, what I'd like you to do is think of a relationship in which you're having some conflict, and just notice what you're telling yourself about the other person. Notice how you're feeling. Notice how your body tenses, and pretend you come to my office for me to help you. Or you've got a client like this coming to your office. I want to offer you the ability to introduce the concept of what being in self means. We can be calm when there's chaos around us, clear about bringing peace, compassionate with ourselves and others, confident in our ability to come up with some new resolution, connected to what I'm calling your higher self, and courageous in the face of conflict so we can reach peaceful resolutions creatively as we're curious about meeting other people's needs. Even when people are angry, underneath there's sadness. Underneath there's a yearning for that understanding, appreciation, acceptance, and attention. And we do it with compassionate communication. And when we compassionately communicate, we connect to your higher self. We let go of limiting beliefs, unburden pain from the past, and relate from your heart. When you think of someone with whom you're having conflict, let's take a breath and think about, what do they do that bothers you? What's their behavior? And then what are your thoughts about their behavior? What are the feelings that you have about their behavior? And then what kind of behavior do you show to that person? Are you walled? Are you angry? Are you judgmental? We're going to learn a new way to communicate that allows you to share your deepest feelings, which we often exile. If you could wave a magic wand, what is the relationship you'd like to have? And what's in the way? And what's in the way usually is limiting beliefs and judgments about the other person, pain that they're carrying from the past, and an unwillingness to really listen from your higher self instead of trying to justify, defend, or get the other party to get your point of view. So with empathy, we look first to understand and then hope to be understood. And if we're not understood, we can create a new relationship, or we can set a boundary in the current relationship, or we can even end the current relationship. But it starts with listening from your highest self, talking about your feelings from your highest self, and sharing with empathy. We're not always in self, we're in parts. And we either have parts that we exile, parts that we manage with, or parts that we get extreme with. And Dick Schwartz uses the term firefighters. I've turned it into extreme. But the exiled parts are the parts that we don't mention very much. When we feel hurt, sad, scared, vulnerable, we push that aside. We don't want to show those parts to the world. Some of us feel scared showing our anger too. But this is the what about me, our inner child. Who's ever going to love and care for me the way I need? And instead we manage. We go out in the world and we manage. Some of us are caretaking and codependent. Some of us manage with anger. Some of us are hardworking. But we often put on what I call a pseudo self, where we're pretending we're calm, clear, and compassionate. We're acting as if, but we're really feeling those exiled feelings underneath. And our mind and our ego tell us how we should behave, what our expectations about someone else should be. And unfortunately, expectations, as someone said, are just premeditated resentments. Radically accepting yourself and others is the beginning of change. When we can't manage those exiled feelings that we're pushing aside, we get extreme in some way. We can get addicted to things, go have an affair, get depressed, drink too much, use drugs, eat too much, have a panic attack, get enraged, decide we want a divorce, which is a choice you can make, but you don't want to make it from your extreme parts. These are ways to numb, because once we've gotten extreme, we can feel guilty about what we've done, but we're still avoiding those exiled feelings over here. These are reactive. So we don't want to be reactive, because when we're reactive, our children suffer. They hear us. They hear us and they see us. And even if we're not loud, they can feel the energy and the conflict. We want to start being empathetic. And when we are, you can communicate and resolve your differences. You can be more compassionate because you're going to speak honestly about your feelings of fear and vulnerability instead of your judgments about the other person. And as you practice these communication skills, of course, you become a better parent. Because when you pay attention to another's feelings, they feel seen and validated. Attention is one of 4 major needs of the heart. And when they feel understood or accepted, their parts calm down and healing can begin. And often one honest apology for actions or inactions that cause pain can save thousands of dollars in attorney fees, minimize damage to children, and create an atmosphere of resolution. When we are communicating from our highest self with empathy, we can compassionately communicate, practice the miracle of empathy, and learn the 5 steps to get what you want and need so that you can have more partnership, passion, and fun. Here are the 5 steps. And this doesn't always happen because we don't always know what we want and need. A lot of us who are codependent have spent a lifetime trying to take care of other people, and instead, we don't know that we deserve to have our needs met. Because when you know what you need and you know you deserve, you can ask for it. And when you ask for it with a sense of calm, you're not giving an ultimatum, you're not making a demand, you're asking for it. And it gives the other party a chance to give you what you want so that you can receive what you want and need and be grateful. The Miracle of Empathy template allows us to speak for our exiles and have the other person listen from self. This is the Miracle of Empathy template, and we're going to go over it piece by piece so that you can see how to use it starting today. People talk at each other instead of to each other. Have you ever noticed that? People want to be heard before they really listen. People want to be validated instead of creating a new relationship. When they come to my office, even if they're coming as couples, they're often coming for me to take sides, to decide who's right or wrong. And a lot of time people come to me for mediation, for divorce. So they're both pretty much done with the relationship, and they have to figure out all of the finances, parenting, what they're going to do about the house, all the legal and financial issues. I bring in the miracle of empathy because I often tell people it's not difficult to make the decisions once you get to self. What's hard is to get to self. We're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And I ask my clients, when I talk about spiritual, what does that mean to you? And sometimes it means God, sometimes it means universe, higher power, Buddha nature. The reason I'm asking them is because I want to use their vernacular when I'm talking about self. So if they believe in God and I ask them where God is, they say it's everywhere. And I say, is it in you too? And they say yes. So when you're in self, you're listening from that calm, compassionate, witnessing place inside of your heart that allows for healing to happen. Compassion and empathy start first with you. In other words, have compassion for the parts of you that are hurt, sad, scared, angry, and learn how to speak for them instead of from them. When you learn to empathize with another's feelings, you can then work together to make positive changes for your future. You can take it one conversation at a time in the direction of peace and understanding. A is someone that wants to talk about their feelings. And what they do is talk about it by saying, I have something to discuss with you, is now a good time. And the reason you want to have the buy-in that it's a good time is because if someone is listening from a part that's upset or angry or agitated, they can't give you the attention you need. So B, who is the listener, either says yes or picks an alternate time of day to have that conversation. So A would say, when something happens, I feel or felt sad, hurt, or scared. Now, you're also angry, you're also upset, you're also judgmental, but that's not going to give you empathy, because the listener, B, is going to be getting defensive, is going to be making rationalizations and defensiveness. And what you want to do instead is to allow them to listen safely. Talking about your sadness, fear, and hurt are the way to begin. Now, some codependents exile their anger. We don't talk about our anger, but often anger has been the underlying communication style. If you really want to go deep, speak to the fact that you're angry because you're sad, hurt, and scared. And then B listens, hears, and understands. The understanding is necessary. It starts with empathy. And that's what I want to offer you, is the ability to bring empathy to all your relationships, because you truly are, I believe we all are, a channel of love and a beacon of light. If you acknowledge that's who you are at your core, then you can begin to make these changes in your life. And when we think about that there's nothing we can do, when we think about what's going on in the world, there's so much we can do. What we can do is to heal our relationships, to find peace in our own heart, in our own families, in our own communities, with our children, with our parents. Estrangement and cutoff is not the answer. So let's do what we can to create peace. Let's do what we can to allow ourselves to share with others empathy. Because when we do compassionately communicate, we can explore all of our options for boundaries, for change, and we can make decisions from our highest self. Using the miracle of empathy, the more peace there's going to be in families, in relationships, and in the world. Because there's so much stress right now in the news, in our relationships. And if we can compassionately communicate with knowing that love is the answer, but it starts with loving ourselves. And it starts with loving ourselves enough to know how to speak from our highest self about the parts of us that are hurt, sad, and scared. And if you're thinking of a divorce, we can change the face of divorce one heart at a time, because your family can be peacefully and respectfully restructured. And if you do get a divorce, you can have a compassionate divorce where you've healed the issues with empathy and you make plans for the future that heals the relationship no matter what form it takes. I've worked with individuals whose partners won't come in for counseling, but when they use these skills, they bring those skills back to their partner, and miracles do happen. There are many times couples come to me for counseling and one of them has one foot in the door and the other foot out. They need to talk about their feelings, even their feelings about the parts of them that want to leave. And we have to listen with empathy, not defensiveness, not rationalization. And when you listen with empathy, they actually learn to practice these skills, compassionately communicate, listen to their other party's words, hear them in a way that they haven't heard them before, reflect back that they understand the other's perspective. It doesn't mean you have to agree. It just means you understand what they're feeling. And that understanding often is a big shift because the other party hasn't felt understood. And then those magic words, I'm sorry. Sometimes they are an actual apology for something you did or didn't do. But other times it's just an existential observation with caring of the other party's reality. And I've seen relationships change in my office. In fact, one person on one of my LinkedIn lives came on live and said he was a client of mine who came to me for a divorce. But after the first session, they were both having an affair. They both decided it was time to get a divorce, and they came to see me. But he shared on the live that they only came to me once because after the first session, as they understood their own parts and how they contributed to the situation at hand, as they understood the influence of their families of origin, as they did the self up the mountain so that they could send compassion in the direction of their partner, and as they talked with empathy, he told me that they were afraid they wouldn't be able to get divorced because they started to feel so good about each other. So as backhanded a compliment as that was, it is a testament to the miracle of it. Wayne Dyer says, when we change the way we look at something, what we look at changes. Let's look at all conflicts from our higher self. Let's look at the pain and suffering of all parties. Let's understand that everyone is scared and sad and hurt, that we're all doing the best we can, and that there is a way to negotiate behavior change. If, as Thich Nhat Hanh, we can get to one side and tell them about the pain and suffering of the first side, and get to the other side and tell them about the pain and suffering of this side. This is my prayer for all that's going on in the world right now. This is my hope and prayer for you and your relationships. And please contact me if you need any help in your own relationships, or if you're a professional that wants to learn more about the compassionate mediation process.